Recording. And I'm going to introduce our speaker this evening. Rebecca Mercuri has been a licensed radio operator for over 40 years. She is the founding president and lead forensic computer scientist at Notable Software Incorporated, where her caseload has included matters involving contraband, murder, viruses, malware, business disputes, and election recounts, most notably the Bush versus Gore election. She has testified on the federal, state, and local level, as well as to the UK cabinet. Rebecca's background also includes industry positions as a software engineer at RCA's David Sarnoff Research Center and AT&T Homedale. She's held professorships at Drexel University, Bryn Mawr College, and Drew University, and research fellowships at Harvard University. She is a life member of the Association of Computing Machinery and the Audio Engineering Society, and a senior distinguished contributor to the IEEE Computer Society. And I'd just like to add on a personal note, I've known Rebecca for many years. Our paths have crossed several times in the past at various IEEE events, and I'm very happy to have her here this evening for this talk. So Rebecca, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. I'm going to open my slides in a second. Just wanted to add to these credentials. After I wrote that all up, I received a notice from IEEE Region 1 that I am receiving a service award from the region for the Moore project. I don't exactly know the title of it. I mean, it's pretty long, so, but anyway, I have been awarded this, was nominated by some of my colleagues, and it was a complete surprise to me. So the Moore project has now actually won an award. I don't take credit for it all myself. So anyway, let me just now share my screen. So I'm going to go into that, and let's see if I can bring it up, and this may work. So, okay, so I hope everybody's seeing it, and we can just need to fix something with the screen share. Whoops, just doing crazy stuff here. Okay, sorry, sort of covering up my, the faces are now covering up my screen. So, sorry about that.
Just so you know, Rebecca, I mean, I'm seeing your screen just fine.
Yeah, you are, except I'm not. Because okay, now I've got it. All right, so I'm good. Okay, I'm good now. Now I have to just move it off to the side. Now I'm fine. Okay, good. Sorry about that. Okay, so anyway, this might have been the notice that you may have received about this talk, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak for the Tanzer Grant Program. I also understand there's something like 8 or so different groups that co-sponsor this, including IEEE USA and also PACE. So thank you very much for all of you for making this happen, and thank you for those of you who are zooming in for this evening's talk. So now let me just see if I can page down. There you go. So, so I'm going to be talking about, whoops, if everybody could mute, that would be appreciated. I'm going to be talking about the Moore project. Moore stands for Make Operating Radio Easier. I will have those links at the very end of the talk too, and if you don't have time to copy them down, I'll put them in the chat at the end too, so you can all contact me or find me through the Moore project and find the Moore project. So you'll see there's 3 logos down at the bottom. I'm going to be explaining about those different logos, starting with ARDC. So Amateur Radio Digital Communications is a really interesting group. They started back in 1981 when this fellow by the name of Hank Magnuski, his call sign KA6M, so you can tell where he's from, and they were from basically Silicon Valley area. They thought, you know, these IP addresses, that sounds like an interesting thing. Maybe hams can use them. So they got a net block, which means the high numbers. So back in the day, you could buy the high numbers, and then you got all the other numbers in the IP address that were under those numbers. And so he was assigned the class A44/8 net block of 16.7 million IP addresses. And basically, it was him and a group of people who said that they were only going to use these or allow them to be used by amateur radio operators worldwide. But again, this was in the early days of IP addresses, that type of internet. And, who would have even guessed how much that net block would have been worth? But, there were a lot of different things that were tried out and many of them failed, but the IP address scheme did not fail. And so in 2019, this net block was worth a gazillion dollars. I don't really know how much it was sold for. I don't think that they've ever made that public, but a quarter of the 16.7 million IP addresses were sold in order to form this private foundation, which is called ARDC. It's got a slash in it, Amateur Radio / Digital Communications. And they now, with that money, again, it's nonprofit, but really it's a private foundation that provides grants to projects and organizations. They have to be related somehow to amateur radio and digital communications. And so currently, when it first started out, they only had one grant round per year, so they sort of geared it up. Now they're having 4 grant rounds every year. So maybe eventually, who knows, they might even just go on a rolling basis. You send in a grant proposal and then, it just goes into the pool on a rolling basis. But right now there's 4 grant rounds available to only, you have to be affiliated with a nonprofit, of which of course IEEE is. So I was able to house, when you're applying, you have to say what nonprofit you're under. So as part of my application, I said that I was going to house this project under IEEE. And they will accept projects large and small. Some of the projects are in excess of $1 million. I think that it's the Internet Archive, that goofy organization that like saves everything that's ever been on the internet. They got $1.5 million from ARDC recently to archive anything that had to do with amateur radio. So, but there's, they'll give away $1,000 if that's all you really need and you propose a decent grant. So I have the link down there of how to apply, but you can just remember ARDC net and go to their website. So what was the background of the Moore project? So what happened was that a colleague of mine who actually runs math festivals, she had heard about this grant. And so she was interested in making a proposal having to do with amateur radio and math festivals. And she called me up and said, by the way, her name is Nancy Blackman. And she said, hey, Rebecca, you could do this. They have all this money, so why don't you apply? So I thought about this and said, yeah, sure, why not? So at that time, the maximum you could request was $200,000. So I figured, what the heck? I'll ask for $200,000. What can it hurt? All they can do is reject it. So, but you had to come up with a very tight budget, how you were going to spend every single one of those dollars, what it was going to be spent on, how why this had to do with amateur radio. And but it wasn't a very substantial proposal. People who have applied for NSF grants say those grants are just ridiculous and they're so highly competitive. But at the time this wasn't very competitive. It's a little more competitive now. Now I think maybe a third of the grants that come in get approved, but they'll also, you can resubmit if you fail to get approved. But basically I drafted this through the fall, had a lot of people look at it, and finally submitted the grant proposal to ARDC on December 20th, 2020, lucky number 20s. The board actually approved the funding request, much to my shock, in the middle of March. In 2021. And as I said, we're housed under IEEE Princeton Central Jersey Sections Broadcast Technology Chapter. So as you probably know, in IEEE, every unit can have its own bank account. So under BTC, not the section itself, but under BTC, that chapter, we have a special account which is just for the Moore project. So those funds are earmarked for that, and they're not considered part of the general section money or even the broadcast technology chapter's money. It's just the Moore project's money. We deposited those. We had a lot of negotiations, and a lot of paperwork had to go back and forth with IEEE's lawyers, and everybody had to make sure that all I's were dotted and T's were crossed. And finally, they sent me a check for $200,000, which I deposited on June 3rd, 2021 into the BTC checking account. And we also have co-sponsorship with the David Sarnoff Radio Club, which is not a nonprofit. So, they're not affiliated with the funding, but they actually host the WordPress site. And its name is the call sign of the David Sarnoff Radio Club.org plus more project with the hyphenation in it. So that's the basic background. How did we come to be? And I like to always say it takes a village. There's no way I was going to be able to do this myself. And I'll be telling you in future slides what I was really proposing. But at the initial call, I started calling for volunteers in November for hams. I wanted help from hams because if I was going to do this the way that I was conceiving of it, I needed to have a lot of hams that had at least a general class license or above, and that they also be certified as a volunteer examiner with an FCC approved testing group. So basically, it could be anything. At first, I really only wanted ARRL because they're a little more stringent in their checking of volunteer examiners. You have to take a little test. There's a number of other groups where all you have to do is just sort of show they have a general class license and sign up. But we've affiliated with a bunch of different groups that, testing groups now. So we sort of loosened it up. But at first, it was basically ARRL people, and then we sort of moved over to GLARG because they have online testing. I'll get to that in a second. But basically, I was looking for these more team volunteers, and we started having these Zoom meetings, and they were active in helping me develop course materials, teaching them more courses once we got rolling, distributing more promotional materials to try to get people to sign up, assisting with get on the air activities, and coordinating and conducting the VE testing. And they still actually do all of these things. So we do have this, I call them the more team. They're all volunteers. But we do give them swag. So, we have all this money. So, so we give radios and give equipment that they can test out. And then they get to, so like a couple of weeks ago, one of our volunteers was developing a something about how to program a radio using a open source software called Chirp. And so he wanted to test it on the radios that we give the students. So I sent him a radio. I said, don't send it back. You can keep it along with the programming cable. So anybody who's helping us out, we're glad to give them equipment. We're into software defined radio and stuff like that. So our volunteers do get some benefits, but they really, really super enjoy doing this, as do many people who are in amateur radio. They enjoy helping out and getting new hams on the air and stuff like that. So it's just part of the amateur radio spirit. But we do have to have, because again, we're dealing with a lot of youth, and our volunteers must fill out an application form. It's just a one-pager, and they have to agree to a 5-page code of conduct, single space, as required by IEEE. So that's very important. We don't do the type of vetting that like Boy Scouts do with, getting, like a security clearance or whatever. We don't do, any of that type of stuff because we're actually not really seeing these people, and nobody's ever seeing them alone for sure, because VE teams are always at least 3 volunteer examiners simultaneously. Most of our activities are virtual. I'll explain about that in a minute. So what makes us unique? The proposal, it wasn't just that I was going to try to license, and the goal was to license, and still is, to license 500 new amateur radio operators. And now I'm sort of saying, well, train and license 500 new amateur radio operators. We'll see if we get to the 500. We might, we'll see what happens. But the goal is still, the 500. And what makes us unique is that our focus is on increasing youth and non-male participation in amateur radio. Amateur radio over the years, over the many, many decades, has primarily been male, although there have been some really famous non-male hams. But it's mostly an older population. And so what people find, especially if they're young or non-male, both of those would have higher voices. So you're sort of known, like you sort of stick out on the air when you're young, and or if you're not male, and so your voice pitch is higher. And there can be some discrimination. So, but sometimes it can be an advantage because you might break through a pile up easier. But in any event, the participation has been rather slight and in those groups. And unfortunately, part of this may be also due to the groups. ARL, as great as it is, American Radio Relay League, if you even pick up their most recent magazine, there is only one photo that includes a female in it in the entire magazine. Many, many pictures in there of people, but humans, but they just don't make an effort to try to even out the demographic. And so a lot of the books for amateur radio study will have pictures of just males on the cover. And even to this day, this is 2023. So I've tried to talk to the publishers of these books, and some of them just completely want to ignore me, unfortunately. But that's again what we're trying to do. So we were looking for that. And as I said, our focus is on this. So in the grant, our goal is to have, of the 500 people, or of the total number of people that we license, we want to have 50% of them be from either youth or non-male. But it could be both. So a young female would be fine. But basically the goal is that would be half of our population. And so right now we're not restricting to anybody because anybody can come in. So if we fill up on one side or the other, then we'll just open it up. But for right now, we're trying to focus on, make it 50%, but it actually is working out that way because a lot of people will, brother and sister, or it might be a husband and wife. We've had numerous teams like that. Colleagues who are working together in a group. So we've been pretty good with the mix, and we haven't had to do any restricting of who we select for being in the MORE project. So right now, anybody can apply and anybody can get accepted. It's for amateur radio people, you may be familiar with the concept of a ham, cram, and exam. It's a one-day type of cram course where you come in like at 8 or 9 a.m. and you learn everything that's going to be in the technician exam. There are 413 questions that need to be in the question pool, of which you will only see 35. It's a randomly picked 35, but it's sort of weighted. But that 35 will be determined, on a random basis. Different exams, booklets, people sitting next to each other in a physical exam will not get the same exam as the person sitting next to them. Although that's not stopped some people from looking over. We see them looking over there. We're like, why are you looking over there? Actually, their grades were worse because they were cheating and they were definitely getting answers wrong. So it was so bizarre. But in any event, we're not doing that. We're not doing a ham, cram, and exam. Even a ham, cram, and exam, the exams are distributed. They're randomized. So it's not a one-day thing. So we're not accepting training groups in that actually only do a one-day thing. One-day things are great. It can happen like at a ham festival, or the Trenton Computer Festival in New Jersey always has a ham, cram, and exam on a Saturday in March. But we don't want that. We want people to really understand the material that they're learning, and so they attend 6 2.5-hour classes before we have them take the exams. And these classes are great. I've got college professors, like just amazing people who have volunteered for this. And we don't have any criteria for our trainers. You just have to have a general class license or above. But well, all hams are great anyway. But the people who have volunteered to do this have been really fantastic. So these lectures are great. And then in between the lectures, we also do, during the 2.5-hour classes, it also includes Q&A of the full 413 questions that are in the exam, and that's in sort of a flip book type of presentation. And they get access to all of those study materials. All the resource materials that we design are available to our More Project students so they can review them. And then we also have demonstrations. So like we'll even have like a shack tour for like 10 minutes, or we'll show them, okay, there's these two guys, who are our trainers. They happen to live fairly nearby. So let's hear them talking to each other on amateur radio. So the students are actually seeing, again, it's part of the more, it's, they're seeing more than just this, very tedious types of stuff that they have to study. But so we try to make that entertaining, and it encourages them to keep going with it. And so that's basically how the classes really work. The More Project grant pays the testing and license fees, but also that same ARDC group started giving away money to other groups like the ARRL. And so they actually have a rebate fee. So they actually give money back to some of our youth people if they test under ARRL. So basically our money's not going out as quickly as we had originally anticipated, but that's fine, because we have run up other expenses, which you'll hear about a little bit later about, the different things that we've done to use the funding. And then groups like GLARG, that's Greater Los Angeles Amateur Radio Group that does the virtual testing. They actually have a youth thing. It's also youth, military, and first responders, and they get their testing for free. So there's a lot of places where we don't have to pay for the testing, but we use that money in other ways. And the coolest part is, and this is a real incentive, is that the licensees receive, it's just basically one of those rectangular boxes that you can get for free at the US Post Office. And whatever you stuff in it, it's just a single fee to ship it, and it ships priority mail with some insurance on it. And it's only like $17 to ship it. So that's really cool. I don't have to buy boxes. We just make up these boxes, and then we just stand around and we drop all the stuff into the boxes, including the radios. You'll see the radio in a second, and a programming cable and a whole bunch of other materials. And sometimes the vendors that we buy the radios from and stuff will send us swag. So, might get hats, and they might get catalogs and stuff like that. Whatever we can stuff in the box, we throw it in. So it's fun. When they get their boxes, they're pretty excited. And what happens is that after they have licensed, so they take the course, then they license, and those who license, well, actually all of them are all permanent members of the More Project. Those who don't license will get reminders that they can come back and rejoin another More course. Or if they took the full course, but they just didn't pass the exam, we can give them hints and tips about taking the exam and stuff like that. And once they have license, we have these virtual and also in-person get on the air sessions that we notify all of our More Project people about, and invite them to attend. So that's basically what makes it unique. This particular lecture wanted me to talk about accessibility as well. So I wanted to say that this is not a part of the More Project. It has always been this way with amateur radio. Excuse me. That licensing exams are open to all abilities. And when you are a VE, volunteer examiner, you learn about how you deal with people who have different types of physical disabilities or hearing problems or visual issues. So the exams can be adapted to all abilities. The tests for anyone are not timed. So people who have testing panic and get worried, and they just sit there for 3 hours if they feel like, and take their time answering the questions, which makes them feel more relaxed for some of the people. And there's always accommodations. We ask our members, the students, when they sign up, to say whether they need any special need accommodations, and we'll be happy to provide that. We can even have a testing group go to their house, and that could, be an elderly person or a young person who, is housebound, and, that will be accommodated. So that's a part of amateur radio. Morse code, as you can see up in the upper left corner, you have this picture of the young David Sarnoff. If you remember who David Sarnoff was, he eventually rose up to become the president of RCA. And David Sarnoff himself allegedly was working at a radio station receiving Morse code, I believe in New York, and may have heard the Titanic. We don't know whether this story is really apocryphal or whether it's really true, but supposedly he was, but he was working. I think it was at a department store. A lot of times department stores would have radios because they were, expecting shipments and things like that. That was his actual Morse code key, which is now owned by the Sarnoff Center. It's a museum that is at the College of New Jersey. And so the reason why I bring him up, not only just because of our David Sarnoff Radio Club, but because David Sarnoff himself, when he got very elderly, so as I say, he was a Morse code operator, so he really knew how to send and receive at very high speeds. And he never forgot that. There's many pictures of him operating from time to time. But when he got very elderly, he unfortunately was so infirm that he could not see or talk. He could hear, and but I think that was also rather weak. But he could tap out conversations on Morse code. This is known, that his family would surround him and he would, tap out messages, and they could tap back on his palm and they could actually have conversations, even though he was so disabled, he wasn't able to speak otherwise. Morse code can also be translated to vibration or light, light flashes instead of sound. So again, this is another way of having an adaptation for accessibility. But the great thing about the present time with amateur radio is there's wonderful new digital modes, some of them invented by Joe Taylor, who is a Nobel laureate of physics. He and another colleague found the binary pulsars, and he always claims that he was listening to these sounds because they actually listened to incoming sound waves, and heard a Doppler effect when they were focusing on these, what turned out to be a pair of pulsars, and that because they were spinning around each other, they were emitting sounds with a Doppler effect because they were spinning. And that's how they were the first to discover the binary pulsars that are out in deep space in the universe. So Joe Taylor, as a ham, he was a ham at a very young age, and he, really credits that, his ability to listen to things and different sound signals in helping him and his colleague discover the binary pulsars. So as he went on in life and his career, I believe he's now retired, he was a Princeton University professor, he came up with these many different digital modes, which they call JT modes after him. And some of them send messages of very low power and very low speed, but they go around the entire globe, and they get picked up by people all over the place and very, very far away. So it's really amazing. So you can send out a message, and maybe 2 or 3 days later, you might receive a contact back. It's really bizarre. So it's all automated, and it's digital, but a lot of people find it a lot of fun. I haven't tried it yet, but I've watched it. I have tried Echolink, which is an internet service for ham, and there's many different other types of internet services. So on my first time on Echolink, you could just call CQ. That's just calling for anybody who's out there listening to come back and give you their call sign. And I got somebody in Oahu, Hawaii. So it's like amazing. This was just through the internet, but it was a random call on amateur radio through the internet. So there's a lot of accessibility. All of these things could be done by people who, have possibly different types of physical challenges or even mental challenges. Amateur radio is also extremely critical in emergencies. The reason why amateur radio still has so much bandwidth is primarily for this. When, as we say, when all else fails, amateur radio is there. And that is certainly really true. I myself deployed during 9/11 to the Princeton Red Cross, which was the Central Red Cross for all of New Jersey, and also deployed to one of the county stations after Superstorm Sandy in New Jersey, the gigantic, hurricanes. And, whenever the entire infrastructure is thrown out, when there are amateur radio operators who are not affected by it, and many of us also have what we call a go kit, just put equipment in and have it in a bag all ready to go with batteries and everything, make sure they're kept charged up. And you can just throw that into your car and leave when you're evacuating your house if you need to do that. And then you'll be able to communicate. But we do have different locations, and there's simulated emergency drills. I myself participated in an all-state New Jersey simulated emergency drill just a couple of weeks ago, and we went to different locations. So you had to be on the air at a certain time in the morning, and then check in. They were listening for people who were volunteering to assist, and then they told you where to go. We actually went to where our station was at the College of New Jersey, but it was supposed to be a triage station where people who were homeless from the simulated hurricane would have gone there, and we needed to relay certain messages. So we had to set up our station, we had to set up antennas outside the building, and we did all that, and then called in, made calls. They asked us certain things, and it was quite interesting. We were there for about 3 hours in this pretend emergency. So this type of thing helps us practice for real emergencies. We have ARES and RACES. RACES is really for civil defense, and but they're pretty much the same. And ARES is just organized by the American Radio Relay League, and that's again just groups of volunteers. We have one in North Jersey and one in South Jersey, so they split into different regions. And then, like every Thursday night or once a month, there will be just a check-in just to make sure radios are working. And sometimes this will be at a Red Cross station, and they're coordinated by different groups. And again, we use voice modes and also digital modes. During that simulated emergency drill, we used some digital modes, which was sort of new for an emergency drill, just to make sure that people understood how they worked. So it's mostly volunteers, and that's the type of things that we do. So it's very, very important now that we're having more and more weather problems and other types of issues. And so I think amateur radio's role, everybody was saying, well, they'll just get rid of our bandwidth eventually. But no, actually, we're really needed even more than ever before because of all these different types of disasters and emergencies. So then we get to COVID. So what happened was that I had applied for this money, but as you can see from the dates, it was 2020 and then into 2021. And now the pandemic was upon us. So we were planning on doing this training at Red Cross places and also at libraries and different locations, and that it would all be localized. But no, it all went kaflooey during the pandemic. So the idea pivoted to doing Zoom for our classes. And then we used GLARG, ARRL, pretty much they were practically shut down as far as testing was concerned, because they did almost only exclusively in-person testing, and you couldn't get into these buildings. Even churches and places where they would normally do testing were closed, and you could not go in for doing testing. So everything wound up being virtual. So our classes were virtual, hence the background screen here. And GLARG, which had always been virtual testing, we pivoted to them. I was reluctant to do that at first, but everybody's thinking, oh, it's going to end, it's going to end. Well, it didn't really end. So if we hadn't pivoted, we really wouldn't have been able to continue. But what we realized was that Zoom poses a lot of attention challenges. Now we know that teachers and school districts and all are saying that, people have been negatively affected by Zoom. So we that's why we do a sort of a mix-up of activities where we do Q&A, round robin, where we call on people. We want to see their faces during the lecture. okay, they can turn their screens off, but during these activities, we want to see their faces. So we want to engage them, and we want to try to bring them in. But what we find is that the students who zoom out, who either close their video or they don't actively participate, those are the ones who have tended to not pass the exam. But again, initially our focus was the tri-state metro area, Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York City. But now we're, and we were going to expand, to all the states, but basically we expanded to anybody who wanted to join the More Project could join. We didn't have to be in any particular physical location. So, but we still are pretty focused on those three areas, sort of, surrounding New Jersey. But it's not restricted to any particular state or anything. And I believe we have licensees now from 10 different states. So in amateur radio, there's a thing called Worked All States. It's like a competition sort of with yourself to see if you can talk to somebody in every state. So we're doing this in the More Project. We would like to license somebody in every state of the United States. So we'll see if we can. And so we're partnering with other amateur radio groups that are doing testing. I think I'll have more of this in some upcoming slides, but the idea is that we will make them a more approved group if they are teaching. So they don't have to use our materials, but they have to do at least 6 sessions and do a structure that's a more gradual approach than a ham cram. And the great thing about virtual classes is that, well, if we recorded them, we're not currently recording ours, some groups do, but if they miss a session, there's other more courses going on, so they can actually just take a makeup class with a different class. So it works out pretty well, so that way they can always catch up. One problem also in the pandemic, you might remember, was this infamous supply chain issues. Well, it was really pretty weird. The radios that we were, we had decided on particular radios, which you'll see in a minute. There were supply chain problems that started in fall of 2021, where we could not get the radios that we had specifically selected for the More course. We couldn't get them for 2 months. So, but what we did was we directed students to go to their ham clubs and finally get on the air that way. Now we're also directing them to try, when they get their license, they won't have their radio yet. So unless they know somebody with a radio, we direct them to try to start to use some of these, the internet types of things where they can use their call sign and get on the air that way. When they finally got their go-to kits, it was great, and we have always had high participation in the training sessions. So now what we've learned is, so the course is 6 weeks long, plus then it's either the 7th week or maybe the 8th week when they take their exam, and then there's a 2-week delay from the FCC until they pay their fee and get their license. So we're really another month or month and a half out before they have their license and call sign. And once they get that and present that to us, then we will ship them out their go-to kit. So that takes a few more weeks too. So it's sort of, it can be from 6 to 8 weeks between the time when they take the test and then get their license and get their gear. So then that's when we'll have a get on the air event. And so those are rolling, and we always invite, all of our prior students back. And then there's other activities that go on. So in the beginning of the go to event, we'll do something interesting, that will be different. And the students will, other people, will be coming in who had gone to one of these sessions before, but they'll learn something new, and then they can zoom out. And then the people who are just the very brand new ones, they will get their go-to training of how to program the radios and get on the air and stuff. So our equipment orders now get placed when each class starts. We know how many students are in the class. We account for some attrition, which I'll explain in some subsequent slides. And then we order the groups of radios and all the other miscellaneous materials. We order those in advance. Sometimes we'll have 2 courses running at the same time, so we place an order for a larger bulk order. But basically it's all on a rolling basis, so that way we're we're always getting the radios in as we at the time when we need them. And here's the radio that they get. Yeah, we could have, for those of you who are hams, about the infamous Baofeng. For like $30, you get this sort of clunky radio, but it's sort of problematic, and it doesn't have a lot of the features of a commercial radio. It's a great radio for $30, but that's about it. So let's not even say it's great. It's an adequate radio for $30, but it's really nice to have one from one of the major brands, because if you stay with the Yaesu line, the methodology of programming and using the different keys and stuff on the sides and on the face of the radio are the same or very similar in all of the Yaesu line. So, we tried out a whole bunch of radios. That was another thing that our trainers helped us out with. And we sent them all radios. We're like, okay, which ones do you want? I'm going to order these 10 radios, test them out, and let me know which ones you like. And we settled on this one. It runs, originally it was around $70 when we first started. Now there's inflation. So it's closing in a little bit on $90 for the radio, but then there's also the programming cable and some other swag that we send them. Their go-to kit itself winds up costing us about $175. So that's quite a nice bonus that they get for taking their exam and license with us. And it's got all of these different features, which are normal for a regular radio. But these are, it's pretty sophisticated, and it's rugged. It comes with a 3-year warranty, which is why we could just order 500 radios and just keep them in a large closet. But because there's a warranty on them, we want to stagger the warranties. So they're, we record their serial numbers, and that is their radio. If it breaks down or becomes damaged in a way that wasn't like they dropped it into a lake or something like that, but if it becomes malfunctioning, we'll take it back and just send them a new radio. So it works out very nice. So far, knock wood, we haven't had any radios returned yet. So it's 2 bands, 2 meters, 77 meters, and also FM radio, and just a whole bunch of other common radio features of a radio of this type. So that's basically the radio that they get. So our first year, we felt it was a success. We completed 4 more courses. 3 of them were virtual, and 1 was in person for Rutgers Bioengineering seniors. We've now had 2 different years where the Rutgers Bioengineering seniors were being taught by one of our more project trainers. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few slides. What we found in the first year was that 70% of the students who took the MOORE course licensed on their first exam attempt. And again, I had never actually been a VE or a trainer before. I was just flying by the seat of my pants and learning from other people. I do have an amateur extra license, but and I did get my ARL VE certificate. So I didn't know what the numbers actually were supposed to be. Everybody who was an experienced trainer and VE told me, wow, that's really pretty high. But I think it was because it was the first year of COVID. People had nothing to do, and this was something exciting that they could do. So then, you'll see in my subsequent slides, numbers started dropping off a little bit. But out of the first 56 students who took MOORE courses, 43 of them did actually license. So that was our total technician licensee. So that was a pretty high yield. And some of those MOORE students actually did upgrade to general, and we even have extras who were MOORE students. The range of students was from 12-year-old to, he was our youngest, to 80s, including some who were disabled. So it was really, great that we could give them these opportunities, and they were very thrilled, in those extreme ranges to have gotten their licenses. Some had, maybe had a parent who was a ham and just always wanted to do it. And it was great. So that was, that also was satisfying that the demographic worked out that way. And again, even though we were just taking whoever applied, our demographic of 50% youth and or non-male reached our goal. So that was who was attracted to it, and that was great. And we found that getting the radio and helping them with operating or directing them to people who could act as what we call on ham radio an Elmer, who is somebody who coaches you and helps you get through. That was a big motivator as well. Our second year, we had challenges. So we were started. So we got the money in June of 2021. We started giving more courses in the fall of 2021 because it took us a while to get up to speed on having our lecture slide sets and Q&A decks and things like that. And we knew that the expiration of that question pool, the FCC expires the question pools on a rotating basis. And we knew that the technician class question pool was going to expire in June 2022. So we really only had about 9 months with that first set of slides until we had to actually update the slide sets and all of our Q&A decks. As I said, 413 questions. People were telling me, oh, they never expire more than 25% of the questions. A lot of them are the same. No, it was more like 40%. I don't know, maybe they had more time on their hands because they're sitting around during COVID. But for whatever reason, it was a lot of questions had changed. So we had to alter everything and update it. But now we're current through June 2026, which is what we are considering to be the sort of end of the Moore project. We do not want to go through another update of the question pool. We may, if someone else wants to inherit this project, they can maybe take it over from there. Right now, our feeling is we'd like to try to get to our 500 goal by June 2026. We'll see what happens. So I've got a few more years left. It's not really that bad. But everything has been updated. That was a lot of work. We also reorganized our lecture sequence. If you know anything about the amateur radio exam, there's 10 different sections of topics. So, like electronic components and circuit designs, ECCD, and radio wave characteristics, RWC. So there's 10 different of these sets of topics that the person has to learn. So the questions come into these 10 sets. And so we lecture for the set and then do the Q&A for that set. So it's sort of distributed out through the course. The very first set of questions, for whatever reason, and again, this is listed by the FCC, but of course we can teach it in any order we want. But the first set that's there in their pool is the most math. It's all the Ohm's law, power law, doing all the magic circle and divides, if you remember that stuff from your early engineering courses. So all of that stuff is in the first section. Now we've got these kids who don't know anything about any of this stuff. For the people who are engineers taking the course, great, they already know that stuff. That's easy for them. But the problem really is that giving all that math in the first section, it's like, whoa, the eyes are glazing over like, oh my goodness, what is the rest of this course going to be like if this is the first session? So we moved that session. Again, there's no rule that says we have to teach it in any particular order. So we moved it to later in the course. So it's a little out of sync with the books, but we just tell them, okay, go to chapter 3 and start reading, that. We've moved chapter 3 back to chapter 1 or whatever. So it's, but it's okay. It works out nice. So the math related phobia is, moved down to later in the course. Hopefully we've hooked them in by then and they're interested in staying in the class. We also find it's very strange. Our first Rutgers class, we had quite a few students taking the Moore course with the professor. He couldn't require it because it wasn't in his syllabus, but he wanted to have it as part of, bioengineering has an RF requirement. All bioengineering majors in certified schools, have to have a radio frequency course, and it's usually a laboratory course, hands-on. And so this professor who found out about the Moore project wanted to teach his RF lab as a Moore course, in addition to the other stuff that was in his regular course. But it overlapped. It's all radio frequency stuff. So he was running through the Moore course materials And they were all, taking that, but many of them didn't register for take the exam. Unfortunately, he gives that course, it's required to be taken in the last semester of their senior year. So these poor kids, they're like they're ready to graduate. They just don't want to be doing all this and take another test that they don't need to take. So that first year, a lot of them didn't register for or take the exam. But and that we also found that in our regular course, that people would get all the way through the course, but they just seem to have testing phobia, even though there's plenty of practice exams that look exactly like the randomized exams that they would actually take. And but they're still sort of afraid to take the exam. So getting them to sign up for it's like, give it a try, and we do a lot of drill with that. But some students, they go through the whole course. So I haven't been able to figure out how to deal with that. In our second year, the first exam, in other words, I showed you on the other slide that the first exam pass rate was 70%. In the second year, it dropped to 55%, which I was told was more normal. Actually, we're still above normal. So normal is lower than 50% for most people who take a ham course and try to take the exam. So, but still 55 wasn't bad. And then the numbers would bulk up if they would take the second or third exam. So keeping a flow of active students, volunteers, and courses really required a lot of micromanagement. So a lot of that fell on me. So, but that's okay. I enjoyed doing this, and prudently, I did give myself a modest salary in this grant. So if I was doing this for nothing, I think I might be more upset about this, but actually I really enjoy it. Other challenges, in the second year, I was using my own IEEE email address. That was crazy. So we moved to a Gmail address, which is now moreproject500@gmail.com. Still all goes to me, but then I send messages out to others to answer it. We're now filtering messages that we send out using labels to help identify categories and groups. So I can send something to all more licensees. So all of the people who have gotten a license through the More Project will receive a mail. And another thing that we did was we established a constant contact account, because I was using BCC again because I didn't want to give out student email addresses. So that was resulting in spam blocking. And I even got SORB. My IP address got put on the SORB list, if you know what that is. So anyway, I had to resort to constant contact, but I actually found it great. Again, the More Project funds were able to pay for that account and also our Zoom accounts and stuff like that. So that was all figured into our finances. Now, I didn't expect to be paying for constant contact, but it was relatively inexpensive. And then I took my Gmail contact database, which was about 300 people, including parents and VEs and all that sort of stuff. And then I migrated that to constant contact, and it was just like boom. It even took the labels and everything and sorted them all out. So that was great. So I would recommend that to anybody who's doing something like this. And the other thing about constant contact, it was driving me nuts. It's like, are they opening these emails? Are they clicking on the links? Are they opening our our websites and the databases that we're giving them? But constant contact would say that. So it actually, so constant contact does not sell your information, but they provide the person who is using the constant contact to be able to peer into every single thing that every single person is doing in their database. So I can see who's opening the email, who is actually clicking on links in the email. If they're not clicking on links, that means they're not using our resources. And it says which links. So again, it's sort of like spying, but that's fine. I mean, it's like, it's a teacher. So, I'm getting useful information about what the students are doing. And that way I can modify the way we're doing things and try to encourage them more to open up their email messages. I also added, we do have, again, because they're youth, so for the people who are under age 18, they have to have a parent or guardian signature. Again, that's required by IEEE. So then we added, I call them Pargar contacts, so that way I could encourage the involvement of family members with study activities. So that's also in our constant contact database. So I can see which parents are actively participating. Some of them don't seem to really care. Their student is, involved in this course and they never open the email, but I can't do anything about that, but at least I can see it. So I feel sorry for those kids. They're not getting much support. So in the second year, in addition to our original 4 courses, we added 8 additional more courses. 7 of those were virtual, and 1 was in person for the Rutgers Bioengineering seniors. So now we had 2 in-person courses with the Rutgers Bioengineering students, and they were a lot more enthusiastic in that second year. We didn't change anything. The professor was doing exactly the same. The only thing different was that he told these seniors, he said, if you put your amateur radio license on your applications for graduate school and job applications, it really gets into it. And that is definitely true, as many of you might know. So we encouraged them, and a lot of them got their licenses. So that was great. That was an incentive for them to get their licenses. So our total as of November, as of when I was writing this, the slide set up, November 2022, we had 92 passed, in other words, licensed students out of 187 overall. So we're at a 49% rate. Our total youth was 31%, and our total non-male was 26%. So if you add those two together, we're, over 50%. But so it's 57%, but there's some overlap. So it's a bit of a cheat. But but anyway, it's close enough to the 50%. I'm happy with the numbers. And again, just because we're located in this area, and that's where a lot of our publicity is. So New York, New Jersey, and Eastern Pennsylvania is 73% of our pool. But we've got all these states here, so we're doing the worked all states, and we'll see how many we wind up with by the end of the MORE project. Here's the picture of the MORE students at the Rutgers Bioengineering Convocation, their awards ceremony at the end of, they're all graduating seniors because that's when they have to take this RF course. There's the professor over on the left-hand side. That's Gary Drzwinski, a brilliant professor of bioengineering, and he's also helped us with teaching some of our courses as well. And he was the one who spearheaded this at the school. And this was just a handful of them, not all the ones who had graduated with their licenses. We made up a special license with their actual license on it, and they received their go-to kits. This was all from the dean. The dean heard about this. He's not depicted in the picture, but he heard about the project that Professor Drzwinski was doing, and he said, I'm going to honor these kids at the convocation. So they actually were in the convocation program, saying that, they had actually passed their amateur radio license, and there's their names up on the screen. So it was really great. And that was another great way of reinforcing that what we're really doing is really helping people with their careers. And it just created a lot of excitement and buzz, and it was totally unexpected to the students, so they loved it. So there we go. So now coming down the home stretch here, what are we doing now in phase 2? We're trying to do more outreach. So that started in 2022, and we were outreaching to groups that we could consider would be a MORE project approved training group, meaning that they could just run their regular course, maybe augment it with a few things that we added for them, and then their students would be eligible for getting the their testing fee paid for and their license fee paid for, and then they would also get the go-to kits when they got licensed, and then they would also be able to attend our go-to sessions. So they were our first MORE project approved training group, and we're just trying to add additional groups, and that's the goal. The goal was never that we personally, the MORE project, was not going to be training everybody. We want to attract other groups around the country and see if we can get them to create their own MORE project groups. Our most popular group that we have of students is the New Jersey Civil Air Patrol. Civil Air Patrol is in many states, and they use radios, of course, in their work. And so their cadets are told that if they take the Moore Project and they license with the Moore Project, they'll get to move up in their communication roles with their squadron and get an elevated, they start out as cadets and then they can become, have special titles. So they're very excited about it, and that makes them very motivated to take their exams and complete their licensing. So, and then they can also take other licensing courses in radio that's used by the Civil Air Patrol. So that's really a good group. We're hoping to find other ones that want to do this and replicate this, and that's what we're basically looking for. As I say, the idea of incorporating more into existing radio training has happened with the bioengineering major at Rutgers, but also senior project design at the College of New Jersey. One of the professors there who coaches the senior projects said that if they got their radio licenses, he could have them do senior projects that involved putting radios, in a space and things like that. They did a moon bounce project where they bounce signals off of the moon and all sorts of things like that. And then the what used to be the Boy Scouts, but now just regular Scouts, they always have had a radio merit badge and also a scouting jamboree on the air where Scouts get involved with ham radio and try to communicate to other Scouts at other amateur radio sites. So getting that Scout Radio Merit Badge is something that is prized by many Scouts, but getting them to then take the next step into licensing is something that we're trying to overcome that hurdle. That Scout Radio Merit Badge gives them about 30% of the material that they need to know to get the amateur radio license. So it wouldn't take them very long to complete the licensing process. So we're working on that. We have not really we keep talking to different scouting groups, but they've fallen a bit short. So we're hoping to get more of them. And then we also, in the grant, there's about $25,000 that I set aside from the $200,000 that was for more project locations, like, perhaps the school in Rutgers, maybe that lab in Rutgers, we may put a HF radio that the students can use there. We've been talking to the College of New Jersey and put so basically about a $1,400 radio with an antenna and, some extra stuff. So we're looking to place, maybe about 20 radios, but we haven't done that yet because, again, a lot of things have just opened up after COVID. So how can you help? This is how you can get involved. We're trying to identify coaching groups that want to host more courses. I think one or two of you already put in the chat that you're interested in doing that. Our goal, as I said, is to license 500 new technicians with 50% youth and or non-male by June 2026. So that's a pretty lofty goal. So we need you to help spread the word. Encourage potential students to use a very easy 3-step application process. Just go there, follow the process. You have to get your FRN number from the FCC. It's very simple, straightforward. Send your application form to moreproject500@gmail.com, and then we'll contact you about when the next courses are coming up. So that's basically how you can help. We really want to just expand this as far as we can. And, especially if you know of any groups of people who, might be challenged physically or have certain issues. I know that that in senior citizens homes and also in senior citizens groups, they also some of them actually do have amateur radio. So that's another place where we could also encourage people to get their licenses or work with people who are licensed. So lots of ways that you could help. Just basically spreading the word. We have lots of publicity materials. You can download those off of the website too, and I can also send you some. So that's basically it. And so that's it. And now we're going to open up to questions. So I'll give you a second. Excuse me, if you want to take a photo of this page. That's our contact information. And we also have a resource page with other additional information. So I'm going to stop the sharing in a second, and then I'll throw it open to questions. So let me stop sharing. And there you are. Oh, Farouk, one of our trainers is here. Hey, Farouk. Farouk's with City College. Yay. Hi, Farouk.
Yes,
Thank.
yeah. Hi, Rebecca. It was
Hi,
a
you want to
great,
want
great.
to add anything?
I just want to add say that it was a great presentation, and
Thank you.
I feel even more motivated after hearing you. And just add one more thing is that it's CUNY, New York City College of Technology. That's where I teach. But we have, I believe, 4 or 5 students who might be, my students who might be your future students in the more program.
Cool. Cool. That's
So,
really
and
great.
I'm also looking into, as you were explaining, with a little bit of planning, perhaps offer more class as part of my senior design project class that I teach.
Right, that'll be really great. That'll be really great. And Farouk, I always love hearing his lectures. He always has a spin on the technology that it just I always get some other new idea in my head when I'm listening to you give the lectures. So I always learn from you as well, even though I've heard these lectures so many times. But it just, to me, I just, you just have a way with this technology that I really appreciate. So, and as it's true with, it's really great that, that I did create this village of people, and, these have been really fantastic people who have volunteered for the More Project and helping us out. So cool, cool. Thank you, Farouk. Really appreciate you zooming in. So if anybody has any questions, some people had been typing in. I guess I'll go through and see what the messages are. Yeah, so you have my contact information. People who are doing training, if you want to turn your training course into a more course, we can, tell you how to work with that. Thank you, Jonathan. I also know Jonathan from the College of New Jersey. And so you have the number now of how many are enrolled. And we try to keep our more courses down to about at about 30 students. That's sort of optimal. We, originally the classes were fairly small numbers of students. We always wanted to have about 12 to 15. But we find, 25 to 30 is a good number because there is always some attrition. Things come up and people can't make the classes. So we let them come back into another course. It's not a problem. So right now we do have 2 courses running, and they all have numbers. So, so this is More Course 11 and More Course 12. And More Course 11 is our second class that's being run at the Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio Radio Club. So they have about 20 students this time. And our More Course 12 is mostly Civil Air Patrol students. I think it's about 25 Civil Air Patrol students and another 5 just general. So that's basically that. So let's see, what else did we have here? Let me see. Let me scroll up a little bit with these questions, see if I missed anything. So let's see, what do you have here? Is ARRL involved? Not per se. So some of our testing groups are ARRL testing groups, but ARRL is not really necessarily involved. They do, though, now have this thing where any of our students who are 17 years old or younger, they can fill out this form when they take their exam, and they will get their license fee refunded by ARRL. And ARRL gives a discount to $10 from the regular $15 testing fee. So we just wind up paying the $10, and they get, their license for free. But it would be free anyway because we would reimburse it anyway. So, okay, so Bob is saying, ironic that your tech classes are 6 2.5-hour classes plus a review. And then, yeah, that seems to be the way it works. It's just, that seems to be, that's just sort of an optimal amount of time. It works out for us. So you have it. So you definitely have to contact me. We can make you into a more course. That'd be fantastic. Do we use the ARR license manuals? Personally, well, okay, so Kirk thinks they're very good. We don't. We find that people find them very problematic and confusing. So we have our materials, plus we use the no nonsense manual, which lists every single one of the questions and then gives a little paragraph explanations of different sections about the materials. So no, we're not using the ARL license manuals, but people are welcome to use whatever they want. But no, we haven't been using those. So so yeah, we're not using the ARL material. So basically, we have our own course. It was really created by a guy who had been doing a ham cram for many years at the Trenton Computer Festival each year, and he created the original slide sets. He's a engineer at Tektronix and was very gracious in providing his slide sets, which we've now adapted and added and changed. So, but we appreciate his assistance. So that's where we came from with that. Thank you very much, Anisha. Sorry you had to log out. A few people had to log out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Excellent program. It's helping students and others get into ham radio and overcome their fear of physical science. Yes, that is definitely true, Jonathan. Okay, and we gave you the numbers. And the last question that I see here is, do we provide training for any disabled people? Oh, somebody has their mic open. If you could shut that, that would be appreciated. I think that's Edward, maybe. But no, we don't. Anybody is welcome to join the More course, and they do not have to. You know, they could just be in our Zoom, listen to it. We can provide the materials, but we haven't converted the materials to anything that would be helpful to people who were visually impaired. But again, they might be able to, if they had a reader, they might be able to do that. But all of the Q&A, that's all text. So that could be translated from text to speech. So that's not a problem. So I would say a lot of the material would be accessible for people who are visually impaired. But we haven't done any of that conversion. So no, unfortunately, we don't. Our focus, though, is that if someone is able to achieve this, that we know that they would be able to at least test. So because the testing is supposed to be egalitarian.
Deepika, I'm chair of COPE committee from APS. This is a activity we sponsored. We did before COVID. We did a similar activity in Germany for training to blind people, so that they can communicate for the first responders very successfully in Munich.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's really great.
And I can share them that we had at least around 18 people. They become the first responder, and many of them, they have job also because they're first responder.
That's fantastic. That's really great.
So if you could do here, and we have a fund from our IEEE societies, we can fund them. We can train them, some disabled people, so they can be part of the community and they can help us.
That would be fantastic. I would really love to communicate with you further about that. But also, I think that this would be a great thing for an ARDC grant. In other words, taking what you folks have done in converting the training materials to something that can be used by the blind and and other disabilities. And I think that ARDC would probably go for that and provide additional funding. So I'd be happy to talk to you about that and see if you can gain additional funding. But it sounds like you have at least some from IEEE, which is great.
Suppose if you type in Google, type my name Ajay Podar blind community in Munich, it will come three, four sessions, and they very successfully did it.
That's fantastic. That's really fantastic. Yeah, please email me. I really want to communicate with you further. That'll be really great. Yeah, that would be a really excellent way. And then also, if we can incorporate into what they're doing into the More project, they could also become a More project. And then, we'd be able to sponsor them with giving the free radios and providing all of our course materials. So that'd be really great. Cool.
Quick question.
Sure.
Yeah. I know that the FCC no longer requires a code test, but does the course include any training in Morse code?
No, we don't train anything in Morse code because, well, you see Morse code behind me on the screen, but that's about it. We do not really provide any training in Morse code because that really would take additional time away from the core materials that are needed for the course. But there are a great number of Morse code is more popular than ever before, actually. There's a number of communities of Morse code where they offer training. It's all, they've got all sorts of online things and, different things that you can download and stuff. And there's a lot of communities of groups that are doing Morse code. And it really literally is more popular than it has been for many, many decades. So we would direct them, to go and get that training elsewhere. But we don't want to take away from the time that they need to be studying for the exam. So just knowing, that Morse code is continuous wave and a few things about Morse code, stay out of those bands when you're operating, voice, et cetera, et cetera. So we talk about it, but only in that respect.
Dot, dot it, dot it, dot.
Very good. Dot it, dot it, dot, 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 dot. Excellent. Okay. For those of you who don't know, it's just saying CQ.
No, I was saying thanks.
Oh, you were saying thanks. Oh, I'm sorry.
Dot,
I'm
dot
sorry.
it, dot it, dot.
Dot it. Okay, sorry. Oh, there you go. CW Ops. Oh, the Long Island CW Club. That's the one I was trying to remember. They're really notorious for doing a lot of training with Morse code. Thank you for putting those up. Dot it. So, but we do teach the phonetic alphabet because that's, that comes up. And when they get their call signs, when I send them a congratulations email, I spell out their call sign in the phonetics, so their names, Kilo, Alpha, whatever. So any other questions? Or I'll tell another anecdote since we're into anecdotes. So just yesterday, I was trying to pay my phone bill, my cell phone bill over the phone using a check. Okay, so a little antiquated, but anyway, that was what I was attempting to do. And I was having all sorts of problems getting through their automated service. They finally put me to an operator. So I get this gentleman and we're going through this process, and he gets to the point where he's going to give me a code that is the code that is generated saying that your check went through okay. So that way I would have that thing. So he starts reading it and he says, I'm going to use some phonetics now. So I had a feeling, since he said the word phonetics, I had a feeling he might be a ham. So he starts doing it and he's using all the correct phonetics because there's sort of a uniform way to do it, but a lot of people change it up. But he had changed up two of the letters. And so I caught him. I was reading it back. I said, I have a sneaking suspicion that you are a ham. And, but you got these two incorrect. So he sort of laughed about it. Turned out he was a ham, and he'd gotten into amateur radio 10 years earlier. And he actually told me that it had saved his life. He was getting in a very bad way in his personal life. And somehow he found a ham radio. He found a community of hams. He got really into it and just really so much enjoyed it. And it just really changed his life. And he's been involved with amateur radio ever since for the last 10 years. And it was just an amazing experience to make a contact. It was the only amateur radio contact I had ever had while paying a bill on the phone. But it was really great. And it gave to me, again, that sense of feeling that it is a community that we're in. And it's not just, people gabbing on the air. It's a whole community. And his spirit was really, it was just really heartening to talk to this fellow. I mean, he didn't have to share anything with me, but we had a good time talking for a few minutes, but then I let him he had to get back to his work. But that's what it's all about. I mean, it's all about the community of amateur radio, and that's been one of the greatest things about all of this is having the experience to be able to train all these people and, you know, help them in many different ways that, you know, you'll have this license, you renew it every 10 years, you'll have it the rest of your life. So it's fantastic. So anyway, that was just cool. Farouk, comment.
Yeah, just something quickly. I think people have to leave. There are, as I mentioned, some younger, you know, the people or the younger generation that you're trying to attract to the Moore program. We have some of those students here. Is there anything you can say to them based on your own experience? You know, as the member of the amateur radio community, but also, you know, being a female.
Oh yes, well, very very nice, yeah, and being female, I found it being an advantage. That's how I wound up talking to Susan Helms when she was on the International Space Station, because again, there's always a pile up when people are trying to contact the astronauts aboard the space station. You know, periodically they will be on the air. And it was at a field day, I think, and somebody handed me the microphone because they knew my voice was higher pitched and would probably break through the pileup of people who were trying to call her. And she heard my voice and picked it right out and came right back with our call sign, and we got a QSL card from the International Space Station. So I've always found it to be fun and an advantage. Yeah, you know, there can be, you know, people who might ignore you on the air or, you know, call you a YL. I mean, the nicknames are OM for old man and YL for young lady. But a lot of times, especially in contesting, they'll hear my voice and think that I am a kid. I mean, I don't think my voice is all that high, but I guess it's high enough that people say, "Oh, let's let that kid come in." So I can get additional contacts usually in contests again because I have the higher voice. But what there is lacking on the air, you know, there's different groups, you know, that meet, you know, like every third Thursday or whatever, for Aries or races or different types of groups. But there haven't been that many women's groups, if any. You know, I mean, I would think that there should be. You know, maybe just have some, you know, gab groups for women. But there have been a number of groups. They just call them nets. So there have been some nets where the person who is net control is a woman, and so, you know, you'll hear her voice, you know, sort of calling out the different people's names who are joining the net. So I would just say, just get out there. The more we get out there and have our voices heard, you know, set up nets and, you know, communicate together. I think it's really great. I think the ARL vice president was female for a long while, and you know, there's been a number of great female hams. One of the slides I use is this crusty old woman in Chicago. She was a newspaper reporter, and she loved to report on, you know, the fires, police action, and this is like in the 1940s. And I have this picture of this crusty old woman reporter surrounded by a whole room full of tube radios, which she would commission people to build her these radios. And she was tuning in on all the police, you know, stations, whatever was out there. She was listening to this and then reporting on all of these calamities that were occurring. And she was an avid ham in Chicago. You can find her. I can't remember her name offhand, but you can just radio ham reporter in Chicago. So you'll find her on the internet. So but you know, there have been some really great women hams, and you know, we just need more of them. We just need more people out there who are excited about the hobby and doing it and spreading it out to others. So don't let anything stop you. The people who ignore you, just go to a different frequency and I'll CQ over there. So it's fine. So, and I think maybe digital modes, I mean, it's nothing as exciting as being really on the air, just tweaking with your radios and your antennas. But in the digital modes, you can create communities there as well. So I think, you know, if you're sort of shy about it, try using the digital modes first and see if you can make contacts there and then move your way up. And another thing I always recommend people, especially young people, is ARL has their field day every single June. It's usually the third week. Oh, there you go, Young Ladies Radio League. There you go. I think usually the last full weekend in June, and that's for every ham. You really want to be at a field day site and try to at least transmit and try to make some contacts on field day. That's like it's just a thing. It's just sort of an annual thing that you do, and sort of like a religious holiday for hams, and it's sponsored by the ARRL. And it's great. If you don't own your own equipment, you can get connected with a club. They'll be somewhere out in a field. I mean, it's really field day. You're out in a field, you're bringing your equipment out there. People will help you put up antennas, or you'll help other people put up antennas, and you can learn how to make contacts. Everybody's very friendly at these locations, and I would recommend young people and women to go to these field day events, and definitely, just try to learn when you're there and experience what ham radio is all about. A lot of people, I mean, even myself included, before I had radios.
Actually, field day was created as a drill in handling emergencies where other modes of communications are out, and you're relying on hams.
Right.
When I was a ham, I was the antenna monkey, the one who climbs up the trees and put up the antennas.
Right. There's certain rules about it. Like, I mean, you can use regular power, but you're supposed to actually be in a location where you're setting everything up. You have a certain number of hours to set your equipment up, and you're supposed to be operating on emergency power, which would include batteries and generators and solar panels, right, things like that. So field day is great. Just look for that. You can just type in ARRL field day and get the dates for that. And we actually at the David Sarnoff Radio Club, I advertised to a lot of our people in the Moore Project who had gotten their ham license, and a lot of them actually showed up at our field day, and it was sort of almost like a little mini reunion. So that was sort of cool. Got to meet some people in person who I hadn't actually seen them before, so live. So thanks, Judy. Thanks for zooming in. Yeah, so that was really good. I don't think I have privileges to save the chat. So any of you who communicated, if you want to just send me an email with the information links that you sent, that would be great. Any other questions? And I wish all of you good luck. So anybody here who is not licensed, we can connect you up with a Moore course in the spring, and you can be licensed by the end of the school year if you're a student. That'd be great. Thanks very much, Bob. 73. So we try to teach a lot of the abbreviations just for fun. And we do like a fake net where, everybody pretends to be in a net, and then we're calling them, especially in the GOTA, because we have everybody's call signs. So it's their opportunity to finally use their call signs. So, okay. Well, thanks very much, everyone, for participating and coming to this special event. Really appreciate it, and hope to hear you on the air, I guess, some of you.
All right. All right, Rebecca, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for participating. Always great to hear from you, and I'm very happy we had this opportunity to learn more about Moore.
More about Moore, for sure. We have lots of more puns. The more the merrier is one of them. So thanks again. Thanks for sponsoring the event. We really appreciate it. Oh, Adrian's here. Hey, Adrian, I haven't seen you in a long while. Thanks for zooming in. So a bunch of people I know. That's great.
Hi.
Hey, Adrian.
Yeah.
We have to get you your license.